UART, which stands for Universal Asynchronous Receiver Transmitter. This is one of the oldest and simplest ways two devices can talk to each other. It uses just two wires, one for sending and one for receiving. No shared clock between the two devices, which is what the word asynchronous means. Instead, both devices agree on a speed called baud rate before they start talking. Think of it like two people agreeing to speak at the same pace before a conversation starts. You'll find UART in Arduino boards, GPS modules, and Bluetooth adapters. It's not the fastest protocol out there, but it's dead simple to set up, and that's why engineers still use it everywhere today.
SPI, which stands for Serial Peripheral Interface. This one is faster than UART and works differently. It uses 4 wires: clock, MOSI, MISO, and chip select. The clock wire is what makes SPI synchronous, meaning both devices share the same timing signal so they stay perfectly in sync. Think of it like a conductor leading an orchestra. Everyone follows the same beat. One device is always the master and controls the clock, while the others are slaves that respond to it. You'll find SPI in SD cards, display screens, and flash memory chips. It's faster than UART and I2C, but uses more wires, which can get messy when you have many devices connected. I2C, which stands for Inter-Integrated Circuit. This protocol is the smart middle ground between UART and SPI. It only uses 2 wires, one for data and one for the clock. But here's the clever part. You can connect up to 127 different devices on those same 2 wires. Each device gets its own unique address, so the master knows exactly who it's talking to. Think of it like a group chat where everyone is on the same line, but each person only responds when their name is called. You'll find I2C in temperature sensors, OLED displays, and gyroscopes. It's slower than SPI, but when you need to connect many devices without using many wires, I2C is your best friend.
CAN, which stands for Controller Area Network. This protocol was invented by Bosch in 1983, and it was designed for one specific environment: cars. Think about your car for a second. It has dozens of computers inside it: the engine control unit, the brakes, the airbags, the dashboard, the transmission. All of these need to talk to each other constantly and reliably. CAN lets all of them share just 2 wires called CAN high and CAN low, while each device talks and listens at the same time. The clever part is how it handles conflicts. If 2 devices try to talk at the same time, CAN has a built-in priority system that decides who goes first without losing any data. You'll find CAN in every modern car, trucks, industrial robots, and even medical equipment. It is one of the most battle-tested protocols ever built.
RS-232. This is one of the oldest communication standards still in use today. It was defined back in 1960. RS-232 is a serial communication protocol that connects 2 devices point to point using voltage levels to represent data. Unlike UART, which uses 0 and 3.3 volts, RS-232 uses much higher voltages, up to plus 15 volts for a 0 and minus 15 volts for a 1. That bigger voltage swing was designed to fight noise over longer cables. You'll recognize RS-232 from that old 9-pin connector called DB9 that used to be on the back of every PC. Today, you rarely see it on consumer devices, but it is still everywhere in industrial machines, factory equipment, old scientific instruments, and point-of-sale terminals. Engineers still use USB to RS-232 adapters all the time to talk to legacy equipment that was built decades ago and simply never replaced.
One wire. The name says everything. This protocol communicates using just one single wire, and that same wire also powers the device connected to it at the same time. It was developed by Dallas Semiconductor, and it works by having each device burned with a unique 64-bit ID at the factory. So even if you connect multiple devices on that same single wire, the master knows exactly who it is talking to. The wire sits high by default, and devices communicate by pulling it low at very specific timings. It is slow, much slower than SPI or I2C, but when you only need to read a simple sensor and you want the absolute minimum wiring possible, nothing beats it. The most famous one-wire device ever made is the DS18B20 temperature sensor. You'll also find one-wire in I-button security keys, battery fuel gauges in laptops, and HVAC temperature monitoring systems. One wire, that is all it needs.
IP stands for Internet Protocol, and it is the absolute foundation of the entire Internet. Every device connected to the Internet has an IP address. Your phone has one, your laptop has one, the server hosting YouTube has one. An IP address is a numerical label that identifies a device on a network, exactly like a home address identifies a house on a street. IP was formally specified in September 1981 in a document called RFC 791 prepared for DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. The engineers who built it were not building a commercial product. They were building a military communication system that could survive a nuclear attack by having no single point of failure and no central control. That decision is the reason the Internet is decentralized today. IP takes your data and breaks it into small chunks called packets. Think of it like sending a book through the mail by tearing out each page, putting each page in a separate envelope, and mailing them all individually to the same address. Each packet contains a header with the source IP address, the destination IP address, a time-to-live value that limits how many routers the packet can pass through before being discarded, and a checksum to detect corruption. IPv4 addresses are 32 bits long, giving a maximum of 4.3 billion possible addresses. In 1981, that seemed like an infinite number. By 2011, IANA, the organization that manages IP addresses, had distributed the last available IPv4 block. That is why IPv6 was created, using 128-bit addresses, giving us 340 undecillion possible addresses. That is 340 followed by 36 zeros. To put that in perspective, if you gave every single atom on the surface of the Earth an IPv6 address, you would still have trillions of addresses left over. The most critical thing to understand about IP is that it is completely connectionless and unreliable by design. RFC 791 specifically states that IP limits its scope to delivering packets from source to destination. It does not guarantee packets arrive. It does not guarantee they arrive in order. It does not guarantee they arrive at all. IP routes and moves on. Everything reliable about the Internet is built on top of IP by other protocols.
TCP stands for Transmission Control Protocol, and its entire purpose is to fix everything IP does not guarantee. IP is connectionless and unreliable by design, meaning it drops packets, reorders them, duplicates them, and does not care at all. For real-time streaming, that is acceptable, but for anything where data integrity matters, a missing byte in a firmware update can break a device, and a missing byte in a financial transaction can cost millions. TCP solves this by adding 3 things on top of IP. First, a connection, where before any data moves, both sides go through a handshake confirming they are ready to communicate. Second, sequencing, where every byte in the stream gets a sequence number, so the receiver knows exactly what arrived and what did not. Third, acknowledgement, where the receiver confirms every segment it gets, and if the sender does not hear back within the retransmission timeout, it resends that segment automatically. On top of that, TCP implements a sliding window for flow control, preventing a fast sender from flooding a slow receiver, and a congestion control algorithm that backs off when it detects packet loss on the network. The result is a guaranteed, ordered, reliable byte stream between 2 endpoints, and that guarantee is exactly why every protocol that cannot afford to lose a single byte, like HTTP, HTTPS, MQTT, and WebSocket, runs on top of TCP.
UDP stands for User Datagram Protocol, and it is the deliberate opposite of TCP.
TCP guarantees delivery, order, and completeness. UDP throws all of that away on purpose, and the reason is more important than you might think. UDP was specified in RFC 768, published in August 1980 by John Postel, the same engineer who wrote TCP. It runs on top of IP just like TCP, but removes every reliability mechanism. No handshake, no sequence numbers, no acknowledgements, no retransmission, no flow control, no congestion control. UDP takes your data, wraps it in a minimal 8-byte header containing just source port, destination port, length, and checksum, and sends it to the destination without any confirmation that it arrived. The TCP header is a minimum of 20 bytes. The UDP header is only 8 bytes. That difference matters enormously at scale when a server handles millions of connections simultaneously. The real reason UDP exists is latency. TCP's handshake, acknowledgements, and retransmission mechanism all introduce delay. For some applications, that delay is completely unacceptable. Think about a live video call. If one video frame gets lost between the sender and receiver, you do not want TCP stopping everything to detect the missing acknowledgement, wait for the retransmission timeout, retransmit the frame, and deliver it to your screen half a second late. By that point, the conversation has moved on, and showing an old frame makes everything worse. You want the next frame right now, even if it is slightly degraded. The human eye handles a dropped frame far better than half a second of freezing. That is the design philosophy of UDP. Accept imperfection in exchange for speed. You will find UDP in video streaming where a dropped packet causes a momentary glitch rather than a pause, in online gaming where a single millisecond of extra latency can determine the outcome of a match, in live voice calls where a split second of static is better than a half-second freeze, and in DNS lookups where a simple query and response needs to complete in under 10 milliseconds. A UDP DNS query requires just 2 packets. The same DNS query over TCP requires a minimum of 7 packets. For a server handling 100,000 DNS queries per second, that difference is enormous.
DNS stands for Domain Name System, and it is the reason you type google.com instead of this. DNS works like the phonebook of the Internet. You type a domain name, your device sends a query to a DNS resolver. The resolver checks its cache. If it has the answer, it returns it immediately. If not, it queries root servers, then top-level domain servers, then the authoritative name server for that specific domain until it finds the correct IP address. This entire process happens in under 50 milliseconds every time you visit a new website. DNS uses UDP port 53 by default because the queries are small and fast. One important detail most people never think about: DNS is completely unencrypted by default, meaning your internet provider can see every domain you look up. DNS over HTTPS was developed to fix this by encrypting your DNS queries inside normal web traffic.
HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and it is the language your browser uses to talk to web servers. It was invented by Tim Berners-Lee in 1989 at CERN. HTTP works on a simple request and response model. Your browser sends a request with a method. Get means give me this resource, post means process this data, put means update this resource, delete means remove it. The server responds with a 3-digit status code. 200 means success, 404 means not found, 500 means the server broke. HTTP 2 in 2015 allowed multiple requests simultaneously over one connection. HTTP 3 in 2022 replaced TCP with QUIC, reducing latency, especially on mobile networks.
HTTPS stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure, and it is HTTP running inside an encrypted tunnel created by TLS. Without HTTPS, every byte you send travels as plain readable text. Every password, every credit card number, visible to anyone intercepting the traffic.
HTTPS fixes this with a TLS handshake that does three things. It authenticates the server using a digital certificate. It establishes a shared encryption key between your browser and the server without ever transmitting that key over the network. And it encrypts all traffic using AES 256, making every byte completely unreadable to anyone in between. Over 85% of all web traffic is now encrypted with HTTPS, and it is the absolute minimum standard for any website handling user data.
MQTT stands for Message Queuing Telemetry Transport, and it was built for a world HTTP was never designed for. It was created in 1999 by Andy Stanford Clark of IBM and Arlen Nipper of Arcom to monitor oil pipelines in remote desert locations via satellite where connections were expensive, unreliable, and devices had almost no processing power. MQTT uses a publish-subscribe model. Devices publish messages to a central server called a broker. Other devices subscribe to the broker and receive only the messages they care about. Nobody talks directly to each other. MQTT's minimum packet size is just 2 bytes, compared to hundreds of bytes for HTTP. That tiny overhead is why MQTT became the standard for IoT devices. Your smart thermostat, your connected sensors, your industrial monitors are almost certainly using MQTT right now.
WebSocket is the protocol that made real-time web applications possible. HTTP was never designed for applications that need data pushed instantly without asking. Live stock prices, chat messages, multiplayer games. All of these need something HTTP cannot provide. The old workaround was polling, your browser asking the server every second if anything changed. Wasteful, slow, and unnecessary. WebSocket was standardized in December 2011 in RFC 6455. It starts as a normal HTTP request but asks the server to upgrade the connection. The server responds with status code 101, switching protocols. The connection is now a persistent full duplex channel where both sides send data at any time without waiting. The server pushes data the instant something changes. No polling, no delay, no wasted requests. You will find WebSocket in every live chat app, every trading platform, every multiplayer browser game, and every real-time collaborative tool like Google Docs.